doing? Listen, welcome to this Barnes and Noble special event. Clearly, no one should have put me in charge, but that's okay, because it's about to be lit. We're about to have a rocking good time. We're about to speak truth to power, and y'all about to be moved beyond your wildest dreams. I'm going to introduce this like beautiful genius lineup of authors that we have coming at y'all today. You talking about some Black girl magic and some Black men empowerment, beautyosity, deliciosity, deliciousness. That's what we got coming for y'all today. First up, I'm going to introduce my child because she's the easiest and I don't have her books in front of me because I just moved and all her books are still in boxes. But Nick Stone, who is, I like to call her the collector. We like to call her the connector, because Nick Stone is one of those delicious people who celebrates you in your moment and in your joy. And so she permeates the room whenever she walks into it, because she is not just collecting information, but she is collecting a journey that she wants to share with you. And people feel that, they love that, they're drawn to that. You've read some of her books. Dear Martin is one of the most preeminent books of this generation. It is sculpted the way we view in which the way we talk about Black boys. And so no one can deny the space and place that belongs to the queen, the goddess, the hair lioness that is Miss Nick Stone.
Can you just come with me to everything and do that every time I have to talk? Because that was amazing. Thank you.
Anytime, queen, anytime. You know, this one right here, this is what I love about this one is people love to mix us up. And
they sure do.
They love to mix us up. And I'm like, listen, if you want to give me credit for writing This Is My America, I'll take that. Y'all just, I'll just show up and I'll be Kim. I'll wear her glasses. I'll do whatever it takes to take credit for this delicious book. That's absolutely amazing. If you have not gone down and got this debut novel by this genius goddess, then I expect you to get on your laptop right now and go ahead and order it, because what you are missing out on is the insight that you need to have the difficult conversations with the people you feel that you cannot battle, but you will need the tools to do it. And this book is just that, and you definitely need to grab it. This beautiful woman right here has been a frontliner. She's been a professor. She has been guiding young minds and educating them about the walk of the African American in this nation for a great period of time. I am honored to share space with the delicious and nutritious, good for you and good to you, Kim Johnson. Cop that. I was supposed to be a rapper, it just didn't work out.
Hey, I think it's still in you. I think you still got it, girl.
Last but most certainly not least, the guest of honor who we are launching in their launch week. You know you dope as a mug when you got to have a week of launches. That's how you know that like the world is waiting to hear. They will log in and plug in from whichever direction in which you're going. We are talking about Ibi Zoboi and Yusef Salaam of the Exonerated Five. And when I tell you this king and this queen both have shaped and rocked this nation in ways that you cannot imagine. I don't know if y'all saw their powerful full page ad in the New York Times, but when I tell you that shook off me in a way that I have not been shook off in a very, very, very long time. And to see that ad and see the retribution that is more than overly deserved, plus then some 10 times more, as the ancestors would say, it made me feel like the ancestors had rose up in that dust that came over for the Sahara and swept over on the authors of this book, Ibi Zoboi and Yusef Salaam. Ashe, brother and sister. Let's get into it.
Ashe.
Yes.
Oh, look at that. Wait, I need a moment. I need a moment. I have never heard anybody in all my book event life said Ashe. Thank you. Thank you, Kim.
You know that was for you, Ibi.
Yes.
You know that was for you. You already know. So we're going to start off. I got a question for all of y'all so y'all can answer it in any order in which you desire. I want you to describe for Nick and Ibi, your most recent, describe your book as if though it was a New York Broadway musical.
Kimberly.
I'll let you go first, Nick.
No, you gonna let me go first. I'm like, oh Lord. I gotta think about this. I gotta think about the musicals. I mean, I feel like it would be the same pitch. Like there's a 17-year-old boy who has confessed to the murder of a police officer, goes through his life, looks back on his life as he writes letters to a friend on the outside.
Bam.
Song and dance.
All right.
Give us free is the theme song of this musical.
Give us three. Get.
Give us free from homicide.
Give us free.
Give us free. Kim, you want to go next?
I can't. Sorry, I can't. I'm just gonna tell you about my book. You should have prepped me. You should have prepped me before.
I like the art of surprise, Kim.
You do. I see it. I'll be ready next time. Yeah. I mean, the premise of my book is really about a family. It's a story of a family where a girl whose father has been wrongfully incarcerated. It tells a story of the generational cycle of trauma, the carceral state, and the power with which in a family fights for their freedom, for their justice, and they do it in a way that they are the helm of their story. Give us free. The rain comes down. Dancers in the back. All of those things.
Jazz head. I love it. It's amazing. Ibi.
All right. I'm going to stick to your question because I love it. But I'm gonna remix your question, and instead of a Broadway musical, I'm just gonna list a soundtrack, right? Dope. That the actors are just gonna have to remix on the stage, and it's gonna be a timeline. And we're starting with 1989 with the terrible tragedy that happened to Yusef. So literally 1989, Fight the Power, Public Enemy, You Must Learn, KRS-One, Funkin' Lesson, X-Clan. Let's see, we're gonna go to 1990. Nope, the year I met Yusef. Let's start Most Def and Talib Kweli, Black Star, their whole playlist. Going to Atlanta, I'm thinking about that time. Aquemini, Andre 3000 and his homeboy. I forgot his name.
Outkast. Big boy. And right now, Kendrick Lamar, We Gonna Be All Right. And all of that. So all those sounds, and Lauryn Hill's entire album in 1999. 1999 is when I met Yusef. 1989 is when the Central Park 5 jogger case took place. So I just gave a little bit of a soundtrack that the actors and singers would have to remix on the stage in order to capture what Punching the Air is all about. That's like an automatic Tony in my book. Y'all win.
Exactly. Tony's all around.
But an opera with classical art pieces in the back, right?
That's crazy dope.
Boom.
Yusef, did you want to add to you and Ibi's musical?
Oh my goodness. If I add it, I'll start rapping. I don't know. That's a little much. That's a little much. That's a little.
You gonna let her have control of the score?
That's a little.
Oh, he ready?
Oh, here we go.
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
Turn it up.
Yeah.
We are at war, the bulk of which will not be physical, the bulk of which is mental. Psychological warfare to make me accept you as better, like your ice is colder or water wetter. Holding court in the streets. This time court will be sweet. We will not accept defeat. The signal will be your heartbeat.
Yes.
Pin drop.
Yo, that was.
I was like this. I thought he was gonna drop one of the epic pieces. Remember back in the day,
accused, right?
Rapper's Delight was 8 minutes long. I thought he was gonna pull that out, because you do have poems that are 10 minutes long.
Oh yeah.
Well, speaking of which, since we're speaking of that now, you two chose to write this book in verse. Tell us what led you to that decision.
Yeah, I always like Ibi to go first because she it's the mother, right? It's the yeah.
All right, yeah. So as I said, Yusef and I met in college in 1999. But the part of our origin story that
is connected to why Punching the Air is in verses. I saw him at the Vegas Valley Book Festival. I was at, a professor had invited all these writers to her house, and in walks Yusef. And I'm like, Brother Yusef. But the next day he was selling his self-published book of poetry, which is what he just read from. And at that same year, that was my debut year. That was Nick's debut year.
Mhm.
And that year there were like a handful. It feels like a lot, but comparatively, compared to 3,000 books published in that year, there were a handful of books that address social justice issues. And here was Yusef Salaam. I knew his story. I remember it from the 6th grade, the Central Park 5 jogger case. And I'm like, why are you self-publishing, bro? You know, they are paying people to tell their stories, and they get your book out there and you can share it with young people. And I think it's a world that Yusef wasn't aware of. And he also expressed the need to be in conversation with young people. And because of because of his case, he was talking to a lot of law students and community centers and did not have access to teens. And I was like, you have to have a book to share, so teachers can share it with them. And this was before the When They See Us series. I didn't know it was happening, and he didn't know if it was happening. There were things happening, but we didn't know how big it was going to be at all. So I personally wanted to tell the story of the Central Park 5 in general. But we ended up telling a fictional story, which is Amal Shahid, who was based on Yusef as a person, but it's not Yusef's story. And he has this long poem. Yusef has this long poem called I Stand Accused. And it was mind blowing because he wrote it at 16 and he recited it in the courtroom after he got his false conviction. And I personally told Punching the Air, that poem is the foundation for Punching the Air, because he was a woke kid. We didn't say woke back then. He was a conscious kid. He was hyper aware, self-aware, and I needed that sort of kid to exist on a page, on a book. We know all those kids who might think like our books are remedial, right? Who read the autobiography of Malcolm X when they were 12 or something, right? And they're reading Baldwin and they're reading Asada and they're trying to just further their mind. Yusef was that kind of kid. Amal in Punching the Air is that kind of kid. And we both wanted that kind of kid, that artist, that poet who is wrongfully incarcerated. We needed that story to get out to young people in poetic form. Also, he's a poet. I was a spoken word artist at that time too. So it was just a beautiful mind meld, and I'm honored to work with Yusef on this.
That is awesome. Yusef?
Your mic, Yusef.
It's been an amazingly powerful, pleasant revival, I would say, because back in 1989, of course, the system, the criminal system of injustice with its spiked wheels not only ran me over, but ran my whole family over. And it was like, welcome to America, right? And in that welcome to America, it was like, welcome to the American nightmare. This is what we have for you. And of course, going through that, I didn't know that I was going to grow through that. It was that whole notion of fall down 9 times, get up 10 that we hear Cardi B talk about, right? And 1999, I'm struggling to get my sea legs back, so to speak. And I'm hiding in plain sight, looking for like minds, trying to figure it out. And I walk into that classroom and the professor turns around and she sees me and she's like, I knew you didn't. And it was like that affirmation of I just needed that, and then she told the class who I was, and it was like a group of peers, people that was in the same age range as I was, that were able to hear this story firsthand from me and really vibrate with it. We were in an African studies course, right? We were talking about Sankofa. We were talking about, just high science stuff, and it was so beautiful to be in that space. And I'm sitting there just like, this is what it's all about, this is what it's all about. And all of that to culminate at this moment, I always say that
every moment that I've had of restoration has been a slam dunk. And it's been a slam dunk in such a way that we still got the ball and the next person is doing an alley-oop to the next person. And so we got the Central Park Five, A Chronicle of a City Wilding, the book came out. And then we got the Central Park Five, the documentary with Ken Burns. And then we got the amazing series on Netflix, When They See Us, with Ava DuVernay. And now we have this. And when I tell you this right here is the water for the seeds of greatness in every one of us. We're diving into the description so that people can walk it vicariously in our shoes, to experience what it's like to be us. And by us, I'm talking about Black Life Matter, right? That thing that is rippling around the globe that we all have a front row seat to. And it's just been such a beautiful process. I can't wait for the rest of the world to read this. I'm loving all of the responses that people are giving us on social media. And I'm just like, man, these moments are amazing.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for your work. Like this book is absolutely beautiful. I was blessed to get an advanced copy. It just, I mean, like just it's just absolutely amazing. So if y'all haven't gotten it, y'all need to go ahead and get it. I want to just ask this question to Nick really fast, because oddly what this sparked in my mind, I'm thinking about the boy that's in Punching in the Air, and it reminded me of your character in Black Enough, which Ibi edited. It for me, I felt this connection between those two stories. I feel like a lot of our stories are like they're a spider web linked and we don't even know it. Like ancestors are coming in, it's like, I'm gonna give you this piece, I'm gonna give you that piece, I'm gonna give you this piece, and I want it all connected, and I want y'all connected. Because we gotta love on each other whether we like it or not. We just stuck together. That's what it is. We family. And so I feel like there is this intersection between a lot of our books. Like I always tell people, my book is if you take the scene from The Hate You Give where the riots happen and just pull that out, that's I'm Not Dying With You Tonight.
It is.
Yeah, so it's like, so I saw that in your character. And Nick, you infamously write a lot of Black male characters, and you're good at it and you're dope at it. So I just want to know, when you were writing your short story for Black Enough and you were expressing this kid that has more to him than the world can see, where did you pull that from?
I mean, honestly, my answer to this is the same as my answer for, like, I get asked constantly, like, why do you write boys? How do you write boys so authentically, etc.? Like, these were my friends. When I was growing up, I was the only girl in my friend group, completely. Like, I hung out with a squadron of Black athletes, some of whom, you know, were athletic for the sake of getting scholarships to go to college. Most of them got involved in athletics to stay out of trouble. And I mean, they were like Black jocks in the late 90s and early 2000s. So you pick up on the things that they care about. You pick up on the things that they're focused on. And as the mother, I have two sons. I'm the only woman in my house, right? So it's interesting. I look back over kind of the course of my own life, and I think about how I have wound up where I am with just like appendages that I don't have. I'm surrounded by them. And being able to communicate and interact with my own sons the way that I know boys are interacting with each other is a really important thing for me. So when I'm writing these kids in these books, it comes from a place of love for my friends and recognizing some of the things that my friends were going through, and some of the very specifically targeted toward them oppression and discrimination that they faced, and wanting to draw attention to that. Interestingly enough, the story you mentioned is actually from the girl character's perspective. So it's always so fascinating to me, coming to realize that like all of the characters in a book or in a story can be multifaceted. But yeah, the boys are certainly important to me. Girls are too, but like, you know, art. Hashtag art.
Definitely. So Kim, your book also talks about this, which is why I feel like this is a beautiful thread that they put together with all of these books. Kim, your book talks about fighting for someone who is innocent, and like what that faith looks like in all its levels, and all, and you know, when it is going through its ups and its down. What attracted you to that theme?
I really wanted a way to open up people's hearts and minds to think about what could be the experience of someone who's going through the carceral state. My inspiration really came from the first iteration of the Black Lives Matter movement, where so much of the conversation was focused on police brutality. And I think for those of us that are very aware of it, that is just only a slice and a sliver of the story. And I really wanted to connect the thread. And I think that that's what I do a lot in my writing. And, you know, you spoke earlier about, you know, ancestors connecting, as I feel like that was what was pulling me to tell my story. Because as you know, for me, actually was really monumental seeing when They See Us came out, hearing that Punching the Air was going to be there, because it just, I felt sort of this like kindred connection to these stories. And then later reading Dear Justice, the early arc of it. And I feel like, you know, what I was trying to do with my story and what I was trying to pour into the story was that when these things happen, they happen to people in a family. And so much of the way that it's portrayed in the media, if it's not completely tearing down the person who's going through this experience, it completely erases the story of what is it like throughout that. And so it was really important to me that I wanted to have a call to action in the story. I didn't want it just to be a story about that experience. I wanted that to ground the story, but I really wanted there to be a way out of how can you move through this process, and how can you still believe even when the world tells you that you shouldn't believe that could happen. And then I didn't, for me, I did focus on the men in this story. I have a main character who was a woman. I did focus on a father and a son going through this sort of generational experience. And I wanted them to still be very present in the family, because they're still very present in the family when these things happen. And I found that sort of telling an innocent story as a way to open people up to be like, wait, hey, if our system can do this to people who are innocent at the level of you know, for my story, it's about a death sentence story. What are all the other ills that are actually happening in our system? And that really was my sort of like core inspiration in wanting to tell the story in this way.
That is absolutely amazing. So this question I open up to all of you so you can answer as you wish. But before I say that, I just want to say to the viewers, shortly, I'm going to run out of questions because these answers are so full and rich that it's like looping like 2 and 3 questions in together. And so that'll be your shot and your moment to go ahead and ask some questions. So please start typing your questions in the chat box, and we're going to answer some of those questions shortly. But before we do that, I want to ask you guys, with the power of language, how carefully do you choose your words, and when are you the most aware of it? Like, in what spaces are you most aware of whether you made a good choice or a bad choice with the way in which you choose words, and how conscious and careful of it are you? Because, you know, people sometimes try to act like we're supposed to represent the whole of Blackness as if though we're monolithic. So
that's
Poor child.
that's a great question. I'll start because we wrote this book in poetry, and we had to say a lot with very, very few words. And what you said about something about not representing, like we don't represent the whole, we are a monolith. But I think we can all agree that there are some things that are harmful across the, I hope we can all, no, we don't. You know, there's things that
we should all agree.
We should all agree that there are things that there are images that are harmful. It just depends on where we are in our reading and life experiences. So with poetry, you know, we just had to be incredibly careful on how we portray a young boy's thought processes, especially if they're aware of what is happening to them. So, you know, for me, I'm coming with the skill set of having written for young people. I have written from the perspective of boys and men, they just not published yet. And coupling that with Yusef's real life experiences, I had to be very tender with it, you know, and intentional, because, you know, it's not, you know, I know that I could have written this without the assistance of Yusef, right? But I don't think it would have had the depth without his personal experience. So I had to be sensitive to his experience, sensitive to the boys who are actually on lockdown, and sensitive to Black boys in general, because I'm not one, right? So in that sense, with poetry, boy, it's a lot of just like internal work. It's not just about reading or tweeting or anything like that. It's the years of work that I personally had to do to understand what is healing, what is empowering, and what can be further debilitating with word choice, right? So it was all about word choice and coming up with one word on one page to say something profound. There are pages that say lights out, and that has several meanings, right? Even Punching the Air, the title has several meanings. So I think both our greatest weapons was the metaphor. We leaned on the metaphor heavily.
So like for me, oh no, sorry, go ahead, Yusef. What am I doing?
No, I was just go. Absolutely. Go ahead.
No. This is the same book. You continue, please.
You know, so language, you know, I come from a space where in prison, we met people that were speaking life into us. You know, the first question I ever got asked that made some sense to me was, who are you? And in that question, I'm answering it saying, I'm Yusef Salaam, one of the guys that they accused of raping the Central Park jogger, but I didn't do it. And the officer that asked me that said, I know that. This is like 6 months into my prison bid. And I'm like, wow, he knows that? He knows that I'm not supposed to be here? And he's like, I'm trying to figure out, why are you here? Who are you? And it was that question that got me going deeper into self, to understand and to uncover what it is that I'm supposed to go through. What am I supposed to get, right? And then what am I supposed to give whenever later on in life through a book like Punching the Air? And there were people there that was also saying words make people. And I never really understood what that was about. And as I started diving into it, I'm like, oh, so as we say something, write something, espouse something, we are creating a space of safety for others, or we are taking away that space. And so specifically for the most valuable of us, the young people, we can pour life into them or we can chop them down. And as we pour life into them, we tell them that they matter, that they're necessary. And I think that that's the part that's most important as we lift them up, because guess what? One day they are going to be the caretakers of tomorrow. And we need to make sure that the future is alive and well, because they are our ancestors' wildest dreams.
Oof, Nick.
Well, hot dang. My word choice right now. Hot dang. I mean, honestly, piggybacking off of what you just said, Yusef, like I think there's something very powerful about language in general, right? Like the words that you use to describe yourself, if somebody asks you who you are, obviously those words are very important. But I also think in addition, and kind of coupled with that, is the way that things are spoken, right? I think about like rhetoric, I think about diction and syntax and how diction and syntax create rhetoric. And I think about voice. My favorite thing about Punching the Air is the voice of the narrator. And it's like, even written in verse, that voice just sings. And there's something super powerful about the voice of a Black boy in the situation that he's in, having a voice that rings so like resoundingly. So when I think about word choice, when I think about how I decide to wield words, a lot of it has to do with voice. A lot of it has to do with validation. Like I think about the history of English literature and how it has racist roots, right? Like most things in this country have racist roots. But like even when we're talking about language, when we're talking about English literature, back in the day, if you were a straight white male or a rich white male, excuse me, because pretty much everybody was assumed to be straight. But like if you were a rich white male in this country in like the 1700s or 1800s, you were taught to read and write. If you were a rich white female, you were taught to read, but not to write. And if you were anything else, you were just kind of like out of luck. Until the point when they decided to teach slaves how to read the portions of the Bible that supported their enslavement, and then eventually how to read the entire Bible. So now when I think about language and I think about the fact that we are writing in English, and English as a language, as a tool of communication, it's constantly weaponized against us. It makes it so important to me to validate the way that my kids talk, right? So I think about the racist idea behind the fact that there's one correct way to speak or write English. When I am writing my books, my goal is to tear that to pieces, because the whole point in language is communication. So if I say something to you and you understood what I said, the way I said it is perfectly okay, right? And that's what I want to validate with these kids and with the voice that I write in my books. So word choice, of course, is important. The way the words are put together is important. And for me, it's all about sound. Even though, I write prose, but prose sound is just as important in prose as it is in poetry, because there's something about the ring of a voice off of the page that really it gives the character, it like brings a character to life. Mm-hmm. So those are the places where like words are important to me. Like what do these words and the way these words are put together make this character sound like, and what message am I sending with that sound?
Yeah. Kim, I'm going to give you the final word, and then we're just going to have a little bit of information to wrap up, and we're going to go to some of these questions.
Great. I'll just keep it really simple. I like symbolism when I'm writing. Often the words that I'm using, they mean a lot of different things. They mean things throughout. I do that through my chapter titles and try to have those themes in there, because it sort of is this sort of a way that you can taste, feel, the words, rather than just reading them. Words, I wasn't a trained writer. That wasn't something that I ever thought of myself as. I think we mentioned earlier Lauryn Hill's album, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. I feel like that was a love letter, a letter that taught me how to write. I feel like when I write, I'm not thinking of it in the way that all the literature that I've read, and I am very well read. I think of it how I feel about the story, how I'm writing about it. Is it evoking the kinds of emotions? Is the messaging? And I think for the kinds of books that we write, we touch a lot of different types of readers, some that intimately know what we're talking about, others that are blessed by the experience of being able to read our work. And I think that when I'm writing, I'm thinking about all of those different layers and making sure that the people that I really want to 100% feel, breathe, smell, taste my work can pick up these things that maybe other readers can't. And I think sometimes that provides a lot of criticism for Black writers, when people who are non-Black who read our work and maybe don't catch all those nuances, and that the way that we're writing, we're touching other depths, of our writing. So,
yeah. Yeah, so to wrap this thing, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this thing on up, and then we're going to get some questions, because we have lots of questions coming in from Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Wait, Kim,
Yeah.
I just want to say that these are all our characters could be on the same cell block. Amal, Quan, tell me your who is incarcerated?
Jamal.
James the father,
and
and then Jamal's the brother. Yeah.
Jamal, and Quan could just be kicking it, trading books. Like they would be in there trading books and like sharing their poetry and stuff. It'd be amazing.
Right. And James is schooling them,
Yeah. Yeah. And don't forget Lena's cousin is about to be joining them.
Come through.
He's about to be joining them. So just one last word from you guys really quickly before we get into the questions. I want Ibi and Yusef to go last, but we're just going to go down really quick and just tell people your social media handles, where they can follow you, and then answer this question. You get a bullhorn that is going to be heard by the entire world. It's going to be translated into every language. It's going to be put in sign for people who are deaf, and you get to say 3 short sentences for the world to hear. What are those questions? So give your social media handle, then answer that question, then we're going to go into the questions.
I can go first.
Yes.
Social media handles, Instagram, I'm at Nick Stone, at NICSTONE. Twitter, I am at getnicked, GETNICCED, because somebody else has the Nick Stone handle and won't give it up, but we're not going to talk about that. And I only need one sentence, and my sentence is, you matter because you exist.
Kim?
So you can find me on social media at Casey Johnson Writes on Twitter and Instagram, and my website. I think that I would leave words with, if you focus on the things that you care about, you can find your inner spirit, your strength. Your call to action is the one that you believe in.
All right. Yep. So I'm Ibi Zoboi, IBIZOBOI, and on every platform. And I love this sentiment. So I'm just going to repeat it. It's on t-shirts. You know, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel by saying, you are your ancestors' wildest dreams. I love ancestor communion. I love honoring ancestors. And I love the idea that you have a million of them and they all dreamed you up and you are here for a reason.
Yusef.
Wow. Man. Dr. Yusef Salaam, SDR dot YUSEFSALAAM on Twitter. On Instagram. Dr. Yusef Salaam on Twitter. Just remove the dot with an underscore, and Yusef.Salaam on Facebook. Wow. So I always post with power posts. So I'm going to say power posts. Keep shining your light in the world.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So we have lots of people who want to talk to y'all. We have a question in here from Facebook that says, what was the greatest challenge getting your book published?
I think for me was actually, it was just really quickly, just believing in myself. When I was writing my story, I didn't know that, I didn't feel confident that publishing would accept me with the story that I wanted to tell, because it hits so many different themes. And I'm just, I'm so glad that I just, pushed through to that and found people who believed in me and were willing to not mess with my stuff, let me do how I wanted to do it, how I wanted to represent it. And if I didn't do that, I don't think that I would have hit all the different themes that I did, and the way that I'm now able to see the impact that it has during this particular time in history.
I didn't know you were going to ask this question, Kim, because this is very interesting. This is my first time showing you, Yusef. After I met you, I started writing a novel called Beast of Prey. And I pulled it out because there was recently an announcement about a novel that's about to be published called Beasts of Prey. And I was like, that was my first book. I was trying to publish that 20 years ago. And look, it's right here. I kid you not. 1999. This is like a synopsis. This was my first chapter. And Octavia Butler read a piece of it, believe it or not. And it was about an incarcerated young man who escapes and into the wilderness and meets a group of like Lord of the Flies type kids who protect him and try to bring him further into the forest. Somebody's gonna take that. I dibs. It's already written.
We need that book.
Can you, right?
I could not.
Can
I couldn't publish it. I couldn't. No, I couldn't.
I bet
this
you
was
can
20
now.
years
I
ago.
bet you can now.
I know
Bet
that.
you can now.
I was inspired. All the tragedies happen because we grew up in New York City, and every year there was something. Every year there was something. After Central Park 5 was Yusef Hawkins, who was right in my neighborhood. They were a few years older than me, but this is why I was radicalized. I don't look like the way I did 20 years ago. I was on some old free Mumia and free political prisoners. I looked very different, but I was radicalized, and I was trying to write this radical novel that was kind of just like Invisible Man, and just a little like with fantasy and magic and nothing like that was out there. it was bad. I'm not saying it was good. It was terrible, but I could not get that published for about 5 years. And then my first book is about an immigrant girl. So I've shifted. I've had to compromise a lot in to get published. So I have not yet written the book of my heart. This is part of my heart. Everything that I've written is part of my heart. But because of how publishing is just like, you know, it's not years ahead of their time. You know, they're not years ahead of the time. It's now that they're publishing fantasy, and there were many of us who were trying to send out our fantasy manuscripts 20 years ago. I had friends who were writing the same thing. So I just want to add, Octavia Butler just hit the New York Times bestseller list this year. She had never been a New York Times bestseller in her entire career. And she had written that down. She wanted to become a New York Times bestseller, but had never been on the list. And this week she hit the list. So all that to say, our creativity and publishing, there's a huge gap, right?
Yep.
Some of us are writing things that are ahead of our time right now and can't get through the door. So that's a reality. You know, no, I don't see a boy like Amal in a book like, you know, like that is wise beyond his years. You know, Yusef needed to be in a book, right? Yeah. The kind of kid who was just like, you know, at 16 being charged of a crime to be like, I'm Kunta in captivity, right? To be incarcerated and be like, I'm Kunta Kinte. And he was making that mass incarceration to slavery connection before New Jim Crow, right? Before 13th, the documentary 31 years ago. So there are people writing right now whose books won't be accepted for another 50 years, probably because of our genius, our collective genius. I said too much. Sorry.
That was
that was a word. We needed that. We needed that word. Nick, I like to do good church. I almost did a good church run on you. I have a question here from YouTube. What are your non-literary inspirations?
Non-literary inspirations. I mean, look, I'm one of those like woo-woo people that thinks everything is literary. Like everything is rooted in story, so everything has some kind of literary bent to it. But I think a lot of my inspiration, honestly, just comes from kids, like the kids I interact with. I have a lot of, I think at this point I have six mentees. I've been drawing a lot of inspiration lately from 2 13-year-old girls who just started 8th grade and are just over everything, and just listening to these adolescent girls talk about how much they hate everything has been wildly inspirational, because they're like seeing young people in this quarantine and hearing what they're going through, man, like there's so many ways to kind of get insight into the human psyche. And like everything I write is going to be about like the beauty of being human, right? So inspiration for me does come from just people that I interact with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Even though they're basically literary too, because we're all living the story.
Yeah. Life is stranger than fiction. Kim, did you want to answer that one?
I think I find inspiration everywhere. Music is a big one. A feeling. I can tell a story from, a chord in a song that I heard, and that is a thing that just sort of keeps me going. I think I also find inspiration through just having my mind go free and not, I work in systems, I work in higher ed, I work in all these different structures. And I think for me, I find inspiration by the freedom of not having to fall into particular boxes, and doing what's true to me. So I find it in a lot of different spaces.
I love it. So I want to ask this question. I want you guys all to ask this question, but I want to start with Yusef. What would you want youth to take away from the book that you've written?
I want them to know that.
And that came from Facebook.
Yes. Nice. Yeah, I want young people in particular to know that they matter, right? When you think about the story of the birds and the bees, every single one of us are all one of over 400 million options. And the great I Am said, be to you. And you matter that much, right? And so to know that, to vibrate in that realm allows you to stand in a space where you found your why. because the great I Am said so, right? And so as you read the words in this book, I think my hope is that it waters the seed of greatness in you. It gives you the opportunity to know psychosocially you matter and we need you, and you give yourself permission, right, to be. Because you've come here with special things that if you don't give it to the world would be without and would be a terrible place because you didn't give it.
Ibi?
is that silence in church after
You
just
like,
like,
the moment when it settles.
Yeah. I just needed me a Martin Luther King fan and I would have been
yeah,
straight.
You know, I think with Punching the Air, I keep saying it's not just about mass incarceration or juvenile detention justice. We all have written about that. And I think there is something unique in each of our books. And for Punching the Air, it's a book mostly about art, the redemptive power of art, the healing power of art. And I have to say that that's inspired by Yusef as an artist. I saw what he was drawing and illustrating and painting while he was incarcerated. I saw the pants that he wore on that fateful night. They were covered in artwork. So this was his redemption. This was his salvation. He's gonna pull it out. There we go. It's a moment, y'all. These were the pants he was wearing. Don't put it around your neck. These are pants he was wearing in Central Park when he was accused of raping a woman. They are white, not stained, not dirty. They've never been washed. And he just got them back a year ago from his lawyer. And you see all the artwork that's on there. And all that was an inspiration for Punching the Air, that there was something that was thwarted. There was something taken away from 16-year-old Yusef and the other young men and all the men that have, and women, young girls too. I want to say that I did not erase the feminine principle from there. Feminine principle being the mother, a love interest, a cousin, all the women in these young men's lives. And we haven't talked about the fact that we are all women, or identifying as women, writing about these men and boys and how it is it that we do the work in the community, right? Yusef told me about his mother visiting him, right? All the women in the community who supported him, and whether or not that's reciprocated. And, you know, that sort of work that we carry with, what was the question? The question was, the takeaway is art. The takeaway is mothers are there. The story, when Yusef talked about the seed, the story starts with Amal's birth, his mother giving birth to him, because I wanted readers to remember that a child was born, a child was taken care of. Somebody fed the child, somebody walked the child to school, and to see this happen it's like ripping a child from the mother's womb, right? So we started with the womb, and, you know, we're all like caretakers in our community. And, you know, Nick and I are parents, and I did not want to erase that from the narrative, because Yusef didn't erase that from his narrative.
Amazing. Well, I think there is one more question we're going to ask, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this up. What do you want your adult readers away with? So I also just want to remind you guys really quickly before they start answering this question, that everyone's books are available on barnesandnoble.com, or they can go to your local Barnes & Noble for purchase. And barnesandnoble.com has signed copies of Punching the Air available now. I would advise y'all go ahead and cop them joints immediately, because I doubt very seriously they're gonna last longer than 32 seconds. So go ahead and grab your signed copies of Punching the Air on the Barnes & Noble website, or you can also scroll on into a Barnes & Noble store and get that. And all of these brilliant authors' books, including mine, are available at Barnes & Noble, so you could go ahead and get those. And so the last question, we're going to go through it, and the order we're going to go is Kim, Nick, Yusef, and then we're going to close out with the goddess Ibi, is what is it that I'm going to, whoever this is from Facebook, I apologize because I'm about to remix your question. But what I want to say is, what piece of advice would you give to adults that they should take away for them to start launching a conversation with their kids about these topics?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is that, our young people are the ones who make movements happen all the time. They're the ones that question, they're the ones that sort of get us out of our own structure and the way that we do things that we're sort of set in our lives. And, I think that, in all of our works, hearing the voices of young people that are told in the stories, that there's something to learn from them. And, I think in all the writing that I do, I think I try to build a lot of different characters so that it actually doesn't matter what age you are when you're reading the story. You should be able to connect them. You should be able to see your brothers, your sisters, your sons, your daughters, your cousins, your parents, all of those different things. But I think for me, the most important thing when I think about why I write the stories that I do, whoever the reader is that, that our young people, they see something, they're important, they have ideas, they can do things in their own way, and it doesn't have to be the way that they believe things are done. And I think the more and more that we can do that, adults can learn from young people. They can change, they can rebuild themselves, they can see new responsibilities that they might not have thought or were part of their role as the adult, and they can learn from their child or the young people around them.
Look, my message to adults is to stop being trash. That's number one. We can be so trash when it comes to young people, y'all. I'm serious. Kim, stop laughing. But it's so true. I find that my hope is that especially after reading Dear Justice, that adults will come away from that book realizing that they are not actually paying attention to the children in their lives. They're not stopping to ask questions. They are not stopping to consider what might be going on in a kid's life. There's so much more to kids than what a teacher sees in a classroom. If a kid is acting out in your classroom, perhaps consider that there might be something going on at home, especially when it comes to Black and brown kids. They are so quickly criminalized and deemed to be dysfunctional in some way, when the same kid in a different body would be given the benefit of the doubt, be like, well, what's going on at home, little Johnny? Let's extend that same courtesy to Black and brown children, and work at being a bit more compassionate, even when these kids are bucking the rules, when they are stepping outside of what we think is acceptable. There's always a reason for a bad decision, and that's what I want adults to walk away with.
Yusef?
Wow, I love that.
There you go.
I love it.
I love it.
I'm gonna say this and then I'm gonna, piece it together. Clone. Ever since that day in the 5th grade, my teachers watched me so hard, so close, that I felt like I was trying to break out of prison, even though it was just school. Every dumb thing I did, they thought it was because of trouble at home, an absent father, a tired mother, not enough books, not enough vegetables, not enough sleep. They believed those lies about me and made themselves a whole nother boy in their minds and replaced me with him. I want adults to walk away from punching the air by seeing us. And I'm talking about the totality of us. Seeing that we have to be master teachers as we educate our children. Seeing that we have to be caretakers of the community as we look out in the streets, like back in the days, how we were caretakers. It took the community to raise the child. There's a certain opportunity here that we can't miss, especially on the heels of being on timeout by the great I am, by something we can't see. That we can return tomorrow better and more informed. And this right here is that water, is that seed, and it's the light in the darkness to provide a way down the path. It says you're walking through hell, keep on walking. That's how you get through.
And I'm going to tie everybody's comments together, Kim's, Nick's, and Yusef's. That poem, Clone, came from the idea of the well-meaning white teacher. As a parent, I have experienced that myself. And the well-meaning white teacher has undone some of the work we've done, can easily undo the work that we do at home. And something you said, Nick, something about, the teachers asking, what's going on at home. That could be helpful and that could be a hindrance as well, if that question comes with a whole set of assumptions, as Yusef just read, right? There's a character in Punching the Air called Miss Rinaldi, Amal's art teacher, and who thinks that she is helping him, but she is doing more damage by assuming so many things about his life and who he is. And I think we could all, Kim, you are a parent, correct? Kim Johnson?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So
we
we're
all
parents.
Are, yeah.
Oh, I'm
We
sorry.
all are.
I don't, these days I just don't assume. Okay, so we are all parents here. And there is this idea that if they don't see the present mother, the present father, there's this image that they have of our children, of Black children, that is just, it breaks my heart. It angers me, and it infuriates me for them to make all sorts of assumptions about why our kids are angry while they're not doing the reading, while they are not doing the homework, while they seem bored or inattentive. I don't think they see the genius of Black children because of all those assumptions. And those assumptions can definitely be damaging. So what I would say, I'm addressing well-meaning white teachers in general, or white people who just don't have a clue about our humanity, right? Miss Ronaldo didn't see Amal's true genius because she's busy trying to teach him about classical art, right? Think about the teachers who try to help our children by just throwing a whole bunch of classical literature at them, right? Thinking that, okay, you need to know this, but without really realizing that this is not a reflection of who our children are. This sort of art, this sort of literature doesn't tell them who they are. So I'm glad that there's something called culturally responsive curriculum. I'm glad that there are, restorative justice circles, that sort of thing that takes it back to what we used to do in our communities, what Yusef says, how we used to care for our communities. It seems like we've given all that power to teachers now, So I think the big takeaway is for adults to really reflect how they are approaching Black children. You are not seeing the sum total of who we are. That should be the first assumption. You do not know us, no matter how many Black books you read, no matter how many TV shows. Come with the assumption that you are here to help, but you do not know everything about us.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have been just blessed with the melanated groove that is this magnificent group of authors. I could not tell you again how blessed you are to have had this experience. We ask that you go to barnesandnoble.com and continue to ride this wave of deliciosity in any way in which you see fit by purchasing all of these authors' books online. And with that, we turn you back over to your lives, but hope that you take the message, received it, processed it, and learned how to regurgitate it. And with that, I say thank you to everyone. Big rounds of applause for Kim, for Nick, for Ibi, for Yusef. I give you all your flowers now. You stand on the shoulders of giant ancestors as you continue to tell our stories in the most traditional way. And I knight you all griots, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pastor Reverend Kim
Amazing.
Jones.
Teacher, preacher. Thank you.
Teacher, preacher.